Good morning, everybody. Pleasure to be with you all here for our second session on teams and the dynamics. Zarina, anything else you want to add before I just dive in?
Yeah, before we dive in, definitely. I want to go ahead and let you know what we're going to take you through today. After today's session, you will gain a deeper understanding just of the inner workings of real estate teams and have a closer look into finances and the specifics of team structure. And you will be crystal clear in the settlement if the team doesn't work out. And with that, Nick, go ahead and take it away.
Excellent. Thanks, Serena, so much. Okay, so first session, we talked about the why. What are the benefits and looking at it more holistically. Now, today, we're going to drill down and really look at the how, the mechanics of a team, eyes wide open, full disclosure, ideally, so that you really, if you want to create a team or join a team, you understand the dynamics of it fully, the ins and the outs. And so picking up the theme of last week and my little Jeopardy categories idea. So the 5 categories today are: 1, managing expectations; clear intention; paying for it; the legalese; and nuts and bolts. So starting off with managing expectations. So we talked about last week, you're coming together as a group, 2 individuals, a bigger group, and you want to play to your strengths and get the maximum benefit of what this team dynamic is going to be. And you also want to be able to have support as you come together, and those that have strengths that can complement your weaknesses and vice versa really begins to demonstrate the efficacy of 2 people, let's say, coming together and becoming the productivity and the benefit exponentially of 3 or more. So as you look to a team, and if you identify someone you want to work with, or you identify a team that's in place, or you're identifying someone you want to add to your team, you must really take the moment to understand what your strengths are, what you also love to do in this business. I have heard so many times people say, well, I need to do more of X to grow my business. And my first kind of challenging question back to that is, well, do you see yourself doing that? Do you enjoy that dynamic of the business? And odds are the person's response is going to be, no, I really don't enjoy that. So realistically, to think that you're actually going to do something that you don't enjoy doing is pretty much folly. So the idea is, if you're a great front person, but you hate the back room, find someone who loves the back room and doesn't want to lead gen and doesn't want to do those things, but gives you the empowerment to then go out there and do more of that, because you now have the trust and the faith that part of your team is attending to that back room. Some people don't even like scheduling their buyer showings or any of that scheduling dynamic. A team could actually just be an assistant that you hire that really supports you in doing what you do best, and then gives you the ability to delegate those things that you don't like to do. Now, speaking of delegation, as you look to growing your team, we're all control freaks. We wouldn't be in this business if we weren't control freaks. So those that have a hard time delegating because they think to themselves, well, no one can do it the way I do it. I have the magic touch, the magic formula. I appreciate that, and I'm sure you do, but understand that unless you delegate some of the dynamics of what this business is, you're going to be very hard pressed to grow your business beyond what your current capacities are. So really look to the team dynamic as that ability to grow exponentially the productivity and ideally the quality of life component in your life, because you have team, you have support, you have the ability to take time off, knowing that you understand each other's rhythm, the rhythm of how you deal with your clients, and those things start to come together and create a greater experience for you in real estate. So really managing that expectation, understanding what your strengths are, taking the time to identify those, really being candid with yourself. This is the hard look in the mirror. What do I not do well? And how do I assemble that team talent to really create that? Now, number two, clear intention of defining the support to grow your business. I touched on the idea that maybe you just need an assistant, and that can be a team. You really need to make sure that if you are identifying a strategic support role, that you flesh out the dynamics of what that job description is. Also, understand that this person is going to be interfacing with your clients. How do you want them to interface with your clients? How do you want them to communicate? What are the preamble questions that they will always ask as part of that integration? Something also to consider as you are talking about a team dynamic is, when do you introduce your support staff into the relationship with your client base? Do they come on that first listing appointment? How are they introduced? All of these dynamics need to come forward so that ideally you always retain the high touch aspects and components of your business, because the knock on team, right, is always, well, you're not going to get the person that showed up in that living room after the first listing appointment. They're going to delegate out and you're never going to see the lead person again. But with me, you get me A to Z. So you really need to understand how you not only define the roles of who's doing what in your team, you also need to know how to articulate that to your client base so that you never feel that what you're offering to your clients in the spirit of service is compromised. Does that make sense to you all? I trust it does. And if there are questions on this, remember, we're going to have the Q&A session as well. So, so let's go to number three. Creating a budget to pay for said support. Now, this can be one of the more challenging dynamics when you look to a team. To grow your business, you must have support. You must have people that support you, ideally with marketing, if you're going to ask to go beyond, or you need more than brokerage can give you and the team staff. You need to look at if you're going to have an assistant that is going to really support you with scheduling and follow-up and all of those dynamics. These people need to be paid. Now, there are a couple of ways that you can structure your support staff payments that can mitigate expense and payroll, things like that. The ideal scene is that everybody on your team is a licensed real estate agent. Now, if everyone is a licensed real estate agent, then they can all be paid through escrow. They can all take a percentage of each deal that is created, and they can be paid that way. And then you're not responsible for any sort of payroll obligation. So as you consider who's on your team, one of the things you may want to look for is that individual that you're going to build your team with a licensed real estate agent. Excuse me. Now, not insurmountable if they're not, but I would strongly recommend that if you have an employee, and I believe it's over 30 hours a week, that you are going to put them through some sort of payroll service. And that you need to talk to both your tax accountant on, and you should check in with, in the Avenue 8 world, Mitch Rappaport, to see if he has any criteria that he wants you to uphold in terms of having an employee. Chatty Arietta can help in that world, in the world of HR as well. But these are the considerations you need to really focus on if you're going to have a legitimate employee. So I want to make sure that's crystal clear. Now, again, back to paying for it. The whole idea of budgeting. If you have $1 and you look at that dollar, how much of that dollar needs to go to pay your expenses? How much of that dollar can you dedicate towards the support staff with the trust and the understanding that by having that ideal support person that you've identified and defined their roles, and you see how they can help grow you and position you to get out and do what you do best, that is a level of trust that a portion of that dollar is going to go towards supporting them and supporting the dynamic, whether it's being taken from 10% off of what you see as your commission to be dedicated to that assistant or to that right arm. That you need to figure out, and you need to carve it out. So you need to budget for that. How much of that dollar is going to go towards marketing? And who's going to handle that? Do you need a dedicated social media person beyond just an assistant? You really got to visualize and consider from the top down, what kind of business do I want to create? Do I want to be a $50 million a year player? Do I want to be a $100 million sales player? All of these dynamics go into that ideal scene that then get broken down into, okay, now how do I realize that, right? So that's if you're just growing a team individually. Now, if you're coming together as 3 or 4 and you look at the volume of your business, then you can start to realize there are more dollars to play with to start to get more expanded dedicated staff. But you still need to look at each dollar and see how much you need to get for yourself to cover your expenses, how much needs to go towards support, how much needs to go to marketing. And then you'll have a better understanding from that perspective. So now the legalese. If you're establishing a new partnership, do you want to create an S corporation that's good up to 100 members of that corporation, shareholders? Do you want to create an LLC? Do you want to create just a memorialized partnership? Again, talk to your accountant. Depending on how big you want to grow your business and your team, start to consider what is the legal foundation of that team for a myriad of potential tax benefits and otherwise protections. If you are considering a legal entity for your team dynamic, talk to your accountant first, and then check with us, check with, in this case, the Avenue 8 world. If you're an Avenue 8 broker, with Mitch, get a better understanding from his perspective. Yvonne may be part of this equation as well, to just give you the support and the guidance that you need so that you know you're setting it up accurately. Depending on what the team name is also, you may want to consider how the DRE looks at legal names and entities. I know there's certain issues with partnership or group. There's certain things that you need to consider with that. So Zarina, do you guys have at the AM level have the ability to support that, or should we be talking to Mitch on that, or chatting?
Yeah, so for anyone within Avenue 8, you can always go directly to your designated AEM, and then they can guide you with whatever needs you have. So
great. So just want to make sure you want to establish this right the first time out of the gate. And because ideally, you look at these teams as a long-term relationship. And that's why culturally, ethically, morally, you want to be like-minded on that, so that you realize you're ambassadors to each other. All right, so let's talk to the nuts and the bolts. So memorializing your partnership, you got to start with the ownership interests. Now, if you're coming onto a team, the odds of you coming in and getting some sort of an ownership interest or any sort of revenue share, unless you're really bringing the heat, you're probably not going to be a part of that. You are going to be a support person from that dynamic. Now, if you are creating a partnership where you're bringing and you're melding your businesses and you're creating a broader whole, identify what those interests are. Are you 50-50? Are we using the last 3 years of our production to determine what are the percentages out of the gate? And so let me articulate a little bit more of that. Let's say I'm bringing 70 over the last 3 years. If I compared my book of business with Zarina's business, and Zarina's we're thinking about a partnership. If I've done 75% more revenue than Zarina for the past 3 years, 3 years may be the metric, 2 years may be the metric, 1 year may be the metric. That's individual choice. But we may say that, all right, we're going to meld our businesses, but in the first year, I'm going to get 75 cents of every dollar. You're going to get 25 cents of every dollar. And we will build in that sliding scale. If Zarina knocks it out of the park and finds a rhythm, and I have an off year, then we got to recalibrate from month 13 on to month 24, and we can determine that. I've seen those partnerships work. They recalibrate at the end of every year, and they will then say, all right, you did 52% of the business, you did 22% of the business, and you did 26% of the business. I think that comes to 100. And then you can reslot and calibrate, and then every dollar that comes in, you demonstrate it that way, and you distribute it that way, minus the costs of running the team and the cost dedicated to marketing, right? I'm going to encourage you all that the dollars you don't touch are the dollars you can't spend personally. So of that dollar analogy that I gave you, take those dedicated dollars to staff and to marketing away before you even think about seeing them and having the opportunity to spend them. That will support you. All right, so I talked about ownership interest. That also speaks to percentage splits as well. That's the B of the nuts and bolts equation. So really look at, as you assemble your talent together, really consider what has been the past versus what is the present. Now, you may be coming together with a partnership. You may raise your hand and say, listen, I want to create a partnership. I'm looking for this kind of dynamic in my partnership. And you both may have done very little business. But the fact that you come together may exponentially help your narrative, may help your confidence, may help your brainstorming, may help the collegiality, may create a sense of belonging. All of those are wonderful attributes that go into the fabric of a partnership. So it doesn't need to be about, I've done a lot of business and you haven't, or we've both done business. You may want to start a partnership just because this is the way you want to grow your business and want to do it collectively. So how do you pay for support staff? I touched on that before. Really want you to consider that you're going to need support. Now, how quickly you make that leap of faith into paying for that support is, again, I'm going to suggest, is correlated directly to how quickly you want to grow. I've seen many partnerships hold back, or even individual agents say, well, I'll do it all myself. I'll do it all myself. I don't want to pay for an assistant. I can't afford an assistant. You can't afford not to have an assistant, because if you're not paying someone else to be your assistant, you're the assistant, okay? And that being what it is, you got to look at, what is my hourly rate? Where can I maximize my energy to create more revenue, and then, you know, downstream delegate those things then to support and keep propping me up. So whether you're an assistant now or whether you're an agent now, consider your role in the team and how do you help grow that team. But you are working in partnership, and it is critical that you honor all facets of those working within the team, because that's going to help with culture and create incentives for your support staff. I firmly believe that you can establish a base, and if it's paid by commissions, but if you then say, if I hit this threshold, you're now going to get a bump. And if I hit this threshold, you're now going to get a bump. Incentivize, incentivize, incentivize. Don't get within your team dynamic. I encourage you all, do not constrain, do not have that limiting consciousness that says, well, I'm going to get mine, and I'm going to suck the bone out of the marrow there, and you're not going to be with me, because that assistant or that junior ain't staying long. You ideally want to create a team that breeds also loyalty. A dear friend of mine, 30 years my senior, years ago, taught me one of the smartest street dynamics of this business. You got to let everybody eat. You got to let everybody feel they've got a seat at the table, and they're going to, when they push away from that table, they're satisfied as well. Because if they step away hungry, they're looking to find somewhere else that'll feed them. So that's my little street moment for you all. So who owns the clients? So if you're coming together as a team, you better bring your sphere of influence sheet. And this This may be the reason to join a team and create a team. Beyond anything else, you're going to finally organize that sphere of influence. Okay. Because I know some of you out there, you're like, where do I access my clients? And is that on a, is that on a comprehensive CRM? Is that on a copper, whatever that's on? Is it there? So you print that out and then you say, this is my book of business. These are my influencers. These may be my business managers, my attorneys. These are the people that are a source of business. You identify those and you memorialize, this is what I'm bringing to the party. This is what you're bringing to the party, because this is the first caveat on if it's not going to work, how you make sure you own your book of business. And you memorialize in your operating agreement that in the event we are no longer together, our Schedule A's of my business and your Schedule B, or call it Schedule A of your business, those are sacrosanct. Those, we don't bleed into that. And I would go one step further, that you would memorialize that if one of my clients calls you, you are to disclose to them, we are no longer a partnership. Please revert back and call Nick Segal. There's another caveat. If that person says, I don't like Nick Segal. I never really liked Nick Segal. I was about to fire Nick Segal. You're the only reason I stayed in this partnership. If that's the case, then you huddle up and you, with your now ex-partner, you say, listen, here's what happened. Here's the dynamic. And you build in a strategy on that. We're going to call this the tail, which is my item G of nuts and bolts of what do you do after you've separated? How do you deal with business that may have been generated together during the course of the partnership? So a dynamic of the tail is if someone wants to cross over from your list to the other list, you need to have a mechanism for that, so you at least get paid for one deal. That's a touchy subject, but you got to memorialize it in good faith. And candidly, the best time to memorialize these things is when you're in the honeymoon, where everyone loves each other and no one could possibly imagine that you would not stay together for the balance of your professional careers. Okay. So who owns the clients? And then what about the client relationships created during the partnership? So we have a partnership, we have a new listing, I'm sitting in the open house, and Alan Long walks in. And Alan Long is a buyer, and I develop a relationship with him. And during the course of our partnership, I do 3 deals with Al, and I'm the primary lead with Al. If we're no longer together, how do we attend to who gets paid what on Alan Long that now that we're no longer a partnership? All of this can be worked out. All of these things can be memorialized. If you need precedence, if you need some coaching on how would we handle that situation, you can reach out to me in the Avenue A world, Scott Carmody, Alan Long. We've been down these roads. We've handled the divorces. We've handled the partnerships. We can help you with that, but you got to have an awareness about it. How do you attend to that clients that are created during the course of the relationship, that if there is an unwinding of the partnership, you know how to deal with that? Okay. And then where do clients go upon the exit? So that is probably the most critical dynamic of a partnership that you create at inception. We've got our Schedule A's, the existing book of business. We've got a crossover clause that would go into that equation. You've got, all right, let's identify the clients that have come forward during the course of our business. If you really wanted to get out in front of it and be crystal clear, there'd probably be at the end of your recap, you would look at all the deals that you did, and you would say, what was the origin of that deal? Who was the primary with that client? In the event there was a break, I think it's fair that we would say that Alan Long would go into my camp, and then we'll deal with the tail of if Alan buys after our partnership. I think if you play it that way, you have the strongest chance of creating trust and retaining trust, but also getting out in front if there was a divide. And then the tail. So the tail is simply, we look at the book of business, we've commingled all of our funds, we've done a great job together. We realize either, sometimes the partnerships dissolve because for amicable reasons. I'm getting out of the business, or I'm moving to Idaho, or whatever it is. There could be a change of life that dictates that the separation of the partnership. So the partnerships can end on good terms as well. So I don't want to make it all seem like it's doom and gloom. And then you consider, well, and again, we can help you with this, what has been the custom and practice in the tail period of time. Like if someone is a prolific buyer or seller, they buy and sell a lot, you could gauge their past activity and say, this person buys 2 deals a year. So for the first 2 deals after our break, I'll give you 50 points of those deals, or I'll give you 35 points of the deals. If they buy something between month 13th and month 24 in year 2 window, I'll give you 15%, or I'll give you 20%. It really just depends. But just eyes wide open, understand that you can look at each other's book of business and you can continue rooting for the other person because you've established the exit in such a way that you stand to win when they win, because you're no longer a part of it, even though you're no longer a part of that relationship. So those are the dynamics of the tail that I really want you to consider. It's just math at the end of the day. It's an honoring of who has the relationship. It's then a consideration for what is fair. You know, certain clients are nightmares, God bless them. They need heavy hand-holding. It's 3 a days. It's every, you may go, listen, you know how much time I'm going to put into this person. I need more of this deal if they buy. So you can calibrate even the client relationship based on the personality of the client to make sure that it's as equitable as possible. Again, we have assisted in creating objectivity and perspective to help partnerships come to terms with their exit. And what I would also encourage is show us, or if you're from an outside broker, show your manager your whole agreement and let them, come forward and give you their opinions of equitable on that regard. So you have that feedback loop going in to the partnership. All right, it is 10:30. And so that is my presentation. And so Zarina, let's open it up for questions or thoughts, comments, experiences, whatever's forward.
Definitely. Just as Colin said in the chat box, if you guys do prefer to ask any questions live rather than the Q&A box going through me, just raise your hand and we can enable your mic. But Jeff Wiseman does have one question for you, Nick. What about a team structure that's not an S Corp or an LLC, but is comprised simply of solo agents?
Yeah, it's fine. You can, however you want to memorialize it. I have found the S Corp or the LLC, there may be tax benefits for you, and that's why you would consider it. It depends on also how many members of the team there are, but it can be as simple as a piece of paper that you both sign and date.
Looks like Sam has his hand raised. Here he comes.
This will be good. I know the question will be good. It's going to entertain. I just have great faith.
So, how does one have a clear picture of his strength or weakness so to avoid going to divorce war?
Well, here's the easiest way to recognize your strengths. What do you love about this business? What do you love doing? For me, it's always be getting the 2 signatures on the page. I love the negotiation perspective. I love being in the room. I love solving problems. I love it from that perspective. And so then I create a narrative around that I can use as my amplification to go out and get business. Those of you that know me, I'm all about the question first, right? So if I hear that there's the need for real estate in some form or fashion, I say, what are you looking for? What's your timelines? How quickly do you want to get there? Do you have someone that you're working with? What are you looking for in your broker? Here's how I work. How may I be of assistance? And suddenly we're building rapport and there's the opportunity. What I hate doing, I hate scheduling. I hate follow-up. I hate all of those backroom things. I want to just be that front and center guy. Now, I'm very detail oriented. So if you're going to work with me, you got to get it right. And I have a very small tolerance for mistakes. 1 is good, 2 is not going to happen. So the dynamics of how you know your strengths are: focus on what you love, Focus on where you want to apply yourself in the business, and then consider the things you don't want to do and say, start putting it out there. Who handles these dynamics? Because I'm telling you, there are plenty of people that are your best complement. You just need to be clear about what you want and what you're looking for, and then it shows up. Does that help, Sam?
Yep. Yep.
Excellent. Alan Long.
So what do you do when you're in a partnership and you realize that you've not negotiated correctly and you're spending more time involved in it and you feel you need a larger percentage of the partnership? Can you renegotiate, and can you renegotiate while you're in a transaction on that particular transaction?
Okay. So did you all hear that question? Zarina, did you hear the question? I'll use my gauge. Okay, great.
Yes, definitely.
So this can be a delicate balance, because ideally, and the reason you're listening in on this is so that you really try to calibrate as much of this out of the gate. Now, I've made reference to the fact that you may be in a partnership where you want to really look at the end of each year, how you slide that scale. And so you may find that, you're working on a deal and the deal is now taking an inordinate amount of time. Now, that would be a reason, you could say that out of the gate. Listen, if any one of these deals takes an inordinate amount of time and you're getting hit with all these crazies, well, one, we should look at why you attract crazies. But aside from that, if you're spending more time on certain deals, you can have that discussion. I would be very judicious about playing that card too soon, because as soon as you do it once, you now give me the opportunity to do it as well. And now we're going to start to undermine the thing. I would prefer that you not do it in the course of a deal, and that you would then look to the end of the year and say, listen, if we look at who was spending the time, who was generating the deals, who was creating the revenue, let's discuss how we want to recalibrate our percentage. Because candidly, you're going to be dealing with branding. You're going to be dealing with introduction of your team to your whole spheres of influence. You're making a big investment. You're making a big commitment. To unwind that can be done. And it's delicate. And that's something you're saying, well, I'm not working with Alan anymore, and now I'm on my own, and clients will roll with it, but clients want stability. They want to know you are there for them. They don't want to be part of your drama. They don't care. If a client asks you how you are, you're fine. You're great. They don't want to say, I'm having a tough. They don't care. So you don't get into it. So from a team dynamic, make sure that you are really clear about how you communicate the value of the team, because they're going to start to fall in love with that dynamic as well. So if you start to look to compromise or challenge revenue in a deal specific, there better be a really good reason.
All right. And then Katrina Webb has a question. She has heard that of team leaders owning all of the leads that come in, Nick. So how common is that?
Depends on how big the team is. There are teams on the West Side where you are basically an indentured servant of that team, and you sit in open house. You have to register all the people that walk through the door, and based on your agreement with that team lead, they own all of those names. They own all of those clients. And if you were to leave that team, you're not allowed to call those people. You're not allowed to engage with them. If you engage with them, if the team lead finds you did a deal with them, they can come after you through arbitration. It can get nasty. So if you're going to lean into going to one of those big teams, and as soon as you start to feel, wait a minute, am I an indentured servant here? You are. And I do not recommend those teams for the following reason. You want to grow your business. You don't want to be beholden to somebody else. The reason you join a team is so you can do this, not so that you can do this. And then you're stuck with the crumbs. That's not a consciousness that I want to play to. So be very careful on that. If you join a bigger team where they're saying, well, these leads are mine because I'm spending the advertising dollars, and they're going to justify it beautifully, trust me. And if you're in a moment of desperation, you may say yes. But know that it's very difficult to unwind that, and you start from absolute scratch if you step away from that.
All right. And then James Shin, he has a question for us. So in hiring licensed assistants, is it strategic to hire them and pay them one at closing, let's say 10 to 15% of the gross commission, two, purely salary based, or three, salary plus some bonus at closing? And for that option three, Nick, what's the standard bonus recommended? This assumes
That's
an
not,
agent closing at
yeah.
800 to 1 million in gross commission.
Okay, so it really depends on how big the base is relative to what it's all about a target, right? I want to pay you $100,000. If I'm making $1 million a year and I want to get, and I'm going to pay you 10 points in my deal, you're going to make $100,000. Does that work for you? Yeah, it works for me. All right, great. So let's figure out how we get to that base for you. In a perfect world, I'm telling you, I would rather it be paid at the close of escrow. As soon as you're, because that person is going to be working more than full time. And now if we get into California law and employment law, now let's say they're working 41 hours. Let's say they're working 48 hours. Let's say now, how are you going to deal with time and a half? How are you going to deal with double time? What about Sundays? You want someone to work, you're working 7 days a week. They need to be working 7 days a week with you. So, and if the partnership goes bad, I've heard of many lawsuits where the junior sues the senior. This is not where you want to be spending your time. I'm going to strongly encourage that they get paid at the close of escrow. They are independent contractors. They are licensed. They're paid through escrow. You just have a working relationship. I'm sure Mitch has some thought, and Scott has said amen on that. So I'm sure Mitch could wax poetic on that one too, but neither here nor there. Any other questions?
Katrina Webb does have another. She has just.
No, she only gets one question. I'm so
all
sorry.
Right, so this I'll take on my own. So we've heard there are a lot of NDAs. Is that true?
Yes, there are NDAs. Absolutely. It's a great point, especially if you're dealing with higher profile clients. And also that NDA can also go forward from the perspective that if I leave your team, Katrina, and I then want to leverage on my own account all of the fabulous things that we did together and make a representation that they're all mine, that, there's an ethics dynamic there. We must have truth in advertising to the general public. And if we start breaching that because I'm now saying I did all this fabulousness by myself when it was really part of that team, not cool. So NDAs can serve very well, not only to protect the anonymity of our clients, but also that if there is a break, that it's crystal clear that you're going to promote the dynamics of what your business that you created in the partnership, and I'm going to promote the dynamics of mine, and we will no longer share that shared volume promotion. Great question.
Thank you all who have attended. We are hoping after today's session, you do feel confident in understanding the mechanics of the team, understand how to manage the settlement if the team structure doesn't work out for whatever reason, and understand what you bring to the team and also what you take. So if there are any questions that we didn't get to, or if anything comes up that you'd like our insight on, please feel free to reach out to us at contact@avenue8.com. And I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day. We will be back up with our next segment of Insights from the Field on July 20th. And that is going to be with our one and only Alan Long, Avenue 8's Managing Director of Los Angeles. He'll be taking us through this session on writing and presenting your offers, something we all would love to know more about.
Can I plug this? Can I plug this just
Sure.
1 second?
Of course.
We're coming into a marketplace where you as an agent are going to have the ability literally to ask the listing agent to present your offer in person. This is a dynamic way to secure deals and to create that human touch. Al is a master at this. I used to love doing this. And that gatekeeper, which is the listing agent, how do you get them comfortable enough to support the idea that you're going to let them talk to your client, that is an art form unto itself. It's going to be a fantastic session. Al delivers this beautifully. And I'm not just saying that because he's in the room. So stay tuned on that one. So that's my plug for that.
Most definitely. Well said. Thank you again, Nick, for leading us through today's session, and to all of you for joining. Hope to see you all in a few weeks.
Thanks, everybody.